Welcome to Discourse. Today we're going to be discussing By George, He Did It by George R. Hall. George takes you on a journey accounting his challenges and accomplishments with a focus on what really matters, including family, education, and positive life experiences. His story, expanding from age 5 to 75, demonstrates the resilience of the human spirit and his indomitable spirit to become somebody and succeed.
From Lincoln Heights to greater heights. Yeah, Mr. Hall was born in 1936, Wyoming, Ohio. And he shares his experiences as a kid, as mentioned, from the age of 5, his first experience with the academic world, up to 75 when he's accomplished so much. I feel like if he didn't have to retire, he probably would still be working this day, teaching a lot of kids and just sharing his experiences.
So we start off with Mr. Hall. He introduces us to his mother. He also lets us in on knowing that he was raised by basically a single mother and his grandmother and grandfather. And he didn't really know his own father very much.
And then his stepfather died later on. He was in the military. And the family ended up getting financial support, being a widow to a military person. And that financial support, that monthly check, actually allowed him to buy a home, pay the mortgage, raise the kids, provide food.
And how much did it cost to buy a home?
Woo! Can't even buy a used car for that amount of money.
It was so little. I was shocked.
It's like $7,500.
Jeez.
It's a family of 4, because he had a brother and a sister.
Right.
And plus the grandparents.
Right.
All living comfortably. So it was pretty crazy.
So nice.
So he starts off with that, and his mother, Mrs. Blanche, or Mother Blanche, he mentions that she didn't graduate high school. That's when she met his father. And even though she didn't have, a lot of education, that she supported them and highly encouraged them to attend college, or if not college, just try really hard. And
she almost made it, though. She made it to 11th grade and then got pregnant with him and had to drop out.
Yeah.
She was so close.
But at least he treated them equally. He mentioned that that's important with kids, because you don't want to feel like the unfavored or left out, or they only want this person or this kid to succeed, whether it's academically, sports. I've seen that.
Although I think the grandparents, he did mention his sister.
She was the favorite because she was a singer and the only girl.
And she had a beautiful voice. I mean, I feel like that would be me. I'd be like, oh yeah, she has a great voice. I love her so much.
But it's interesting to note that he also mentions that his younger brother had the best voice.
Right.
But he always dismissed it. Like, he didn't even care.
He kept it to himself.
He'd rather go party. He probably did a lot of karaoke. I don't know. Yeah, and it's also sad. He lost his brother and sister. A lot of hardship throughout his life. But one thing I noticed throughout his autobiography is that even though there's a lot of hardships, a lot of racism from back in the day that he mentioned, segregation, he didn't let anything slow him down. He always, regardless what happened, he kept leveling up. He pursued academic greatness. And just being raised by his grandparents and seeing his mother work so hard to raise the kids, treating them equally as mentioned, and also pushing that education on them. Like, I didn't graduate, I didn't do the best I could do, but I wish, I'm going to do the best I can to push you to greatness.
Be the best that you can be. Yeah, exactly.
It didn't start out so great, kindergarten.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Miss B.
So, yeah, he lets us in on his very first experience in the education system. Oh my gosh, it just made me tear up so bad. I couldn't even believe it. Kindergarten, he's 5 years old. The rest of them, 5 years old. They just started getting potty trained, right? Or have been potty trained.
Oh.
You go to school and the teacher's not even going to let you go to the restroom. Oh my gosh.
And anyone that has kids or nieces, nephews,
These
whatever.
kids need to go to the bathroom like every hour on the hour.
Yes.
Jeez Louise.
So unfortunately, he had an accident. And even though he was able to hide it, it seemed like he could hide it throughout the daytime. When he got home, on his way home, he just couldn't hide it anymore. And his friend, I believe, made fun of him for a while,
neighbor,
right?
Yeah.
His neighbor too. And just the traumatic at such a young age. But not just that. So mentioning Ms. B, horrible teacher.
I know. Can you imagine your kindergarten teacher? He goes on to explain how she was just the worst, super strict. She pretty much, wasn't taking nothing from no one. She didn't care if you were 5 years old and had to go to the restroom. She basically said that he had no drive. He was going to go nowhere in life. And he definitely proves her wrong. And I like that later on, further into his story when he's, he like dedicates a chapter to Miss B, his kindergarten teacher. I like that he was like, she lived until really old, like 90, in her 90s. He
found out that she was still alive.
That she was still alive. And he's like, I could have found her and said, like, look at me now. But he did it. And he's glad that he didn't. And I think that says a lot about his character. Like, throughout the book, I feel like he would have been that teacher or that principal who was super, super cool. And, like, everybody loved. And, I don't know, everybody who knew him just loved him. He just seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah. And even though he experienced racism throughout different portions of his life, when he was in sports, when he went to restaurants, he had to go across town just to get a haircut.
Yeah.
He didn't let any of that
affect his
leadership or his motivating students, whether you were black, brown, white, whatever. He treated everyone equally.
Yeah, I feel like it was prevalent in that time because that was during civil rights and stuff. But I don't think he ever let it hinder him or keep him from doing anything that he really wanted to do. He was just kind of like, okay, well, I got to think outside the box and do things a different way to get it accomplished.
That quote that people say, like, be the change you want to be or the change you want to see in the world. He lived it. It's crazy. You can never tell that he was even had those experiences, those negative experiences, right?
It's always interesting to hear people's experiences, especially during moments like this in history. I feel like this isn't necessarily a history book. He doesn't really go into it too much about the racism and things like that. It was just enough to make you understand, like, yeah, this was the time that he unfortunately was growing up in and what he had to deal with. And it made you understand more of his character.
But if you're a history buff, it gets you that interest. Like he mentioned, somewhere where he was, that's where the Underground Railroad was. A state where they had like the most slaves. The bands.
Oh man, so the music. So music was obviously like a huge part of his community, of his family. And he was a part of, some singing groups that would tour and stuff and go around do gigs. And he shared the stage with some pretty prominent musicians of the time. Sam Cooke. That's so amazing. I was like, oh my God, I know who he's talking about.
And if y'all don't know, what's the one song you showed me the other night?
You want me to sing on camera?
Don't sing it. Just say the name.
Abel!
Hey. Okay. So, aside from being told, just because, as a 5-year-old, I was shy myself. But if a teacher told me, just because I was shy and didn't want to get involved, like, you're going nowhere, man, I probably would have thought that was it. Like,
I know, I'd have been like, okay, well, I have zero motivation. But he actually took that in a totally different way. And I feel like he took that same mentality, I mean, starting from a 5-year-old, for goodness sakes, but throughout his entire educational career and even further. Yeah. He took every moment, every instant, and he used it as like a fuel for his fire to just keep going, moving ahead, pushing forward and advancing. And it was amazing to hear in his perspective how he went about accomplishing so much.
Yeah, and I think as a teenager and then young adult in school.
Oh my God.
The K through 12.
Yeah. No, I loved how he was talking about how him and his friends, how just the shenanigans him and his friends would get up to. I loved reading about that. I love reading about
looking good for the ladies.
Oh, and his amazing car. I thought that was so cute. I love that he included that.
The blue goose.
Yeah, you can feel how vibrant of a character he is. Dude, he was 6'4", and then he was like, but I couldn't play this position because some other dude was like 6'7". I was like, oh my God, because you were short. Jeez Louise. I was like, ooh.
He probably just chuckled at that. He was like, all right, got the spot.
That was crazy. I was like, what? If anybody told me I wasn't tall enough to 6'4", I'd be dead. That's just crazy. Anyways, okay. I forgot about that part. That just like popped into my brain. That was funny. Thanks for hanging out with us, and be sure to check out By George He Did It by George R. Hall.